got a big pineapple for my haters, a gold can with custom indicators. So when you see me, you'll know that it's me. Big pineapple coming through your city though. So haters, let me tell you this. If you flexing and hating on me, what the hell you doing? You look stupid, to be honest. Go sit on a pineapple. Oh, 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 oh. You know, and a pineapple. Big pineapple. Go sit on a pineapple. I got a big pineapple for my haters, a gold can with custom indicators. So when you see me, you'll know that it's me. Big pineapple.
All right. Now you can hear me? Um, this is a brand new thing. It's called Meld Studio. So it's like OBS, but a lot easier to use. But free, completely free, unless you want to have, I don't know, the AI aspect. But it's great. Oh, muted. Am I back now? There I am. Okay, okay, cool. Okay, now I'm going to go back because I had to check. If I want to see the chat right now, I have to check on the YouTube studio. But if I want to see the studio, I have to go to the studio. So I can't see chat. All right. So I just wanted to say hello and how's everyone going? So hello, how are you all going? And tell me in the chat because I should be able to play the replay later. Yeah, I haven't been around very much. I've been dealing with my own sobriety issues and for the last 6 months, since before Christmas actually. I've been sober. I have had a couple of slip-ups, but they're slip-ups, they're not relapses, and it's been two. Um, so I'm not beating myself up about that because that's the whole, um, decatastrophizing things because I have a habit of catastrophizing a lot. And if I get into that, then I'll start the spiral of drinking again, and blah, 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 blah. It is what it is. So yeah, I've been trying to sort out my health and all that sort of stuff because I keep losing weight. Um, I do have this eating thing called ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. It just means that you know, some people would call it picky, but if it's a bit beyond picky, if I had the ability to eat, I would. Um, so I just don't. And I actually it's gone past that into anorexia, not nervosa. There's a difference. The anorexia aspect is the lacking the ability to feel hunger. And I'm not sure if that's trauma or autism. My therapist isn't sure either. And I do want to just put in line that I'm not giving out any sort of advice or anything. This is just all about me, and about how therapy has helped me immensely over the last 6 months, deal with a whole range of different situations and my emotional regulation, just general life, and because I'm living a very good life now, like I live by myself, I'm very happy. I've got my two dogs, Ben and Magic, and the house has been painted, and everything's just amazing. And sometimes I wake up and I'm just like, you know, is this real? Because I'm not used to things being amazing. And I think sometimes when you're not used to that sort of sensation, that feeling, you look for things that are wrong. And yeah, and it's only really been now that I can stop looking for the things that are wrong, because I'm safe. I'm very safe. I'm very protected, very supported. Um, and yeah, I just feel really good about life and everything in general, actually. And yeah, so um, and therapy is a big part of that. And been seeing this therapist. He's actually a bit more than a therapist. I say it's just easier than writing out clinical psychologist. So he can diagnose and re-diagnose and all that sort of stuff. So it's not just talking to someone who has been, yeah, no, he's he's up there. And I say that only because there has been instances where I've said stuff that my therapist has said, and people have thought that it's coming from me. So I don't know. And for instance, there was a situation where I was called a narcissist in an offhanded sort of way, and I don't think it was intentional. Might have been, not sure. If it was, I know it's not true because I have a therapist I check with on a regular basis to make sure I'm not a narcissist because I get called it so much. Um, and yeah, and and we spoke about this quite a lot recently because situations and things um, and yeah, and it's not so much that it affected me being called it. It was more so that these people knew that it was something that would hurt me. Two things. I give these people the information. I tell them what's going to hurt me because I tell them what other people have done before. So, and so I'm just not going to give people that information anymore. Um, only safe people, and I'm going to take a little bit of time to figure out who these safe people actually are because, you know, sheep in wolf clothing is a is a perfect example for some of the situations I've wound myself up into in the last however many years, probably my entire life. Because if they look kind, they act kind, then I expect them to be kind. Um, you know, and a large part of that is because I find it difficult to act any way that I don't that doesn't mesh well. So that's why I've never really been in cliques, like the girl groups where they all hang out and all that sort of stuff. I've never really had that. And the majority of that is because, well, you watch the movies, Mean Girl, prime example, and yeah, it always seems to end up that way, regardless. And regardless of how much people might say that's not going to end up that way, it does. And yeah, and I was involved in that sort of situation too, all throughout my life. There's been times where I've picked on other people because part of being wanting to be part of the crowd and being accepted. And I've got a video a bit later. I need to talk a little bit before it makes it so it flags it and takes it down. So I just need to talk a little bit. Yeah, so and it's not so much about that I think any of this is intentional. I feel like I set myself up for these patterns. So I'm very much culpable and accountable for these things. Um, but if it wasn't for me being there, they wouldn't happen. And if it wasn't for me accepting this sort of situations, they wouldn't continue. And because I stay, because I was an octopus, and I used to say that because I have this strong ability to hold on. If you're my friend, I will hold on to you. And I've always said that I don't lose friends. Friends lose me because they made me let go. Because otherwise I'll just hold on. And I kept once again going back to my therapist. Is that I wondered where this all came from over the years. Why I end up keep getting myself into these situations because happens once, shame on them. Happens twice, whatever the saying is. But if it keeps happening, obviously there's something that I'm contributing to the situations, to keep them continuing. So this past year or 2 years, probably even a bit longer, 3 years, has been very, very um, insightful for me as far as learning what people actually mean. And a lot of times I don't know if they know what they mean, because I certainly don't know what they mean. So, but yeah, I'm just going to check my thing again, make sure you can still hear me. Yeah, exactly. The only person we can control is ourselves. So, um, but and I've sort of, you know, I'll go back to my last session with my therapist because I was on I was watching a live with Mental Health Matters, and they were talking about narcissism, and and because my father's a narcissist, extreme version, attempted murderer, blah blah blah. My mother's a narcissist, probably a covert type version, and I haven't come up with these terms for my parents. But my therapist, after a long term, has not diagnosed him with them, with not he hasn't diagnosed them with it. He has said the traits they have shown me are these traits, and and if they do it on a consistent basis, blah blah blah. And also my father, considering all the stuff that he's done, yeah. But so yeah, I'm not going around calling people a narcissist because one, I feel it's kind of you know not people that maybe I just don't dislike. I just disagree with. Oh well, I had a disagreement with them. They're an instant narcissist. And a lot of this has come through counseling because I figured out who's been the actual true narcissist and who's had personality disorders and all that sort of stuff. And in finding that sort of stuff about other people, it makes me understand why I put myself into those situations. And a lot of it, all of it, stems back to my mother. I have an abandonment issue, and because my mother did it over and over again, and so I was an octopus because I needed to hold on to these people because if I don't hold on and do what they say, how they say it, act how they want, then they're going to leave me too. And it's just kept happening over and over again, like I hold on, and then something happens, and then, they leave or I upset them or, and it becomes too much. Everything always too much is a big thing, you know. You know what? If I'm too much, maybe you're not enough. And I don't even mean that because sometimes I can be too much, even for myself. I have to go to my room. I put myself in my room, just because I can't deal with the world. Or, I'm too much. I'm too much today. I'm going to my room. So I do that. And, and for a large portion of my life, well, majority of my life, up until very recently, I have been hanging on for acceptance because someone needs to accept me, someone out there. And if not me, then nobody will. So, that's sort of where I've come down to is that acceptance comes when you actually start truly accepting yourself. And that means everything. And being diagnosed with autism at 41 was a shock because I didn't realize. Apparently everyone else did, but I didn't. And and some people say I use it as my identity, which I do not. It is part of my identity, but it does not make up all of who I am because that's not even true. Because how could I go through life for 41 years not knowing something and then all of a sudden, oh well, no, that's exactly who I am. No, it explains a lot of things behind who I am, and I've got functional capacity reports out the wazoo, $2,000 each, thank you very much, to tell me exactly how I am disabled by my autism. So to have people come back at me and say, no, no, you're just using your disability as an excuse for bad behavior. Well, okay, well, I'm really sorry that I did the wrong thing, but it's not an excuse. It's an explanation for why I may not have picked up on some things that I should have picked up on, like social cues or, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I miss out on, like, like when people talk in double speak. I don't really understand that. Like I get sarcasm, I get entendres, but when people tell me things and I'm supposed to read between the lines, it seems like a unnecessary puzzle. So just tell me, and I'll probably take it well, depending on what you're telling me. Like it might not be well straight up, but generally just give me a few minutes to process because I have a processing disorder. It's part of my disability. So sometimes it can take me a few minutes, few hours, few days, few weeks, few months, few years. Still haven't processed some things because I have a processing disorder. So yeah, so I do understand now that people who say they understand don't actually understand when they're saying that people with disabilities are using them as an excuse. I mean, that's not to say that some people aren't out there being an asshole just for the sake of it because they've got autism or, in a wheelchair. I mean, I've had my feet run over by some dude in a wheelchair recently, and he didn't even say excuse me. I was at an ATM and I moved out of his way and turned around so I could squish back a bit more, and he ran over my toes. So he did it on purpose, asshole. And I said it. I don't care. He's in a wheelchair. Even he's an asshole in a wheelchair. So, so if you're an asshole with autism, all right, that's what you are. you're an asshole with whatever, you're an asshole with whatever. That thing isn't what's making you an asshole. It's who you are as a person. Um, so anyway, I've been learning all about patterns, and my patterns, and what I've been leading up to is that, I've got, it's my fault for these situations, not entirely, it's not my fault for the way other people behave, but it's my fault for not recognizing these patterns and all these behaviors earlier so I wouldn't get myself into these situations again and then go, "Oh, why is it happening again?" So we'll just talk about, so my mother's abandonment. So that came from basically birth. She was a very young mother. She went through a whole bunch of her own trauma. I've spoken about it online. As much as possible, I try not to talk about her anymore. It is Mother's Day here. Hi, Mom. Go fuck yourself. Sit on a pineapple. Um, so I hope she's not watching. If she is, meant it. Um, but anyway, so yeah, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so all the abandonment from my mother. Happy Mother's Day. And also the control of my father. So I went from the abandonment of my mother to the control of my father, to control of people, basically right up until I got to live by myself. And even then, I still had people still had control over me in some way, whether it was I thought they had control, although they actually did. And it's only been very recently that I've come to terms with the fact that um, I'm responsible for these people leaving. And it's not that, um, you know, I sort of seen the signs earlier. I'm not blaming myself or anything. I'm just sort of recognizing the patterns. So I've gone from the control of my father to the weird relationship I had with the kid's dad, where I decided, because we were both kind of controlling, like, we gave as good as we got, and I said I was never going to do that again. And then I ended up in the control of my ex, and like my first abusive ex, like, DVO type, very abusive ex. And so I've gone from one situation of control, people pleasing, all that sort of stuff, all my life. And then with that person, I was in there for 8 years, and then I got free and I was independent for a very long time. And I thought that I could be that way. And I had immense losses during that time. I lost a baby, I lost Tony, and it took 2 years to rebuild myself back up from those losses until I sort of figured, you know what, I got time and I'm kind of healed right now. And then I met this last particular person, which I'm not allowed to talk about online, so I won't. Um, so, and that was another situation of control. But all through that has been these friendships with people. I've developed friendships with people, and those friendships have been dependent, codependent, all those sort of things, not interdependent. And interdependent is very different to codependent and dependent, or even, completely independent, and we all need a bit of interdependence. So, but I've been codependent, my life has been based around the happiness of others. And, for a while there, because I didn't think I deserved to live because of the situation of my birth, blah, blah, blah. I didn't like, not so much live because, I'm a pretty decent person, but I meant deserve to exist flat out. Like, I should never have been here in the first place. If the world was as it should be, I wouldn't be here. Unfortunately, it's not, so I am. And, and this last year and certain friendships and all that sort of stuff actually came to make me realize, what, I do deserve to be here. And if I wasn't here, my kids wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this great life I have right now. So I do deserve to be here. Just haven't quite figured out what my purpose is yet. Well, I've still got my project as far as bringing awareness to men's domestic violence perpetrated by women. But I'm putting that aside until I've got the capacity and clarity, when I've looked after myself enough, that I can actually start looking after other people instead of it being a attachment style, like, I don't know, whatever you'd call that thing, like, I need them to need me, otherwise nobody needs me and I shouldn't exist, blah, blah, blah. It all stems back to that. And anyway, so, and and I've been learning a lot about boundaries, and I like boundaries. I like to know what they are, and I like to know what they are before I hit them. But if I hit them, I like to know straight up. And I have difficulty with people coming back and saying, you know what, that thing you did a couple of weeks ago, yeah, didn't like that. But I also kind of understand it because I have a processing issue, so it's like, okay, maybe it took them a bit to process it, they had uncomfortable feelings about that. So I take it as it comes, because I try and treat people as I want to be treated to the best of my ability. Um, yeah, so, and I just really wanted to just sort of say that I've been watching a lot of interesting things. And there's this thing that I've been noticing. Oh, that's right. My final type of not high control or any type of that, but it was kind of like that was that whole situation that we probably all met each other in, which I won't mention, you know, you know, failing and all that sort of stuff. We all kind of went to that community for help in some way, help to help somebody else or help for ourselves. For me, I went to help for myself because I was in the midst of that final really abusive relationship. And I'd already found my counselor. I figured out that, yep, nope, this is definitely terrible. So I started looking for ways of getting help, you know. And so that's how I happened to cross that community. And also, I'm fascinated with cults. So that's how it started off with that. So anyway, so I started off with that community. But basically, it's a trauma bonded community. We bonded through trauma, and then the trauma just continued. It it started off, that's how we got there, and then for some the trauma started way before others in that situation, and some were hurt far more than others, and it's you know and but it carried on for so long because everybody got some benefit out of it except for those who were most harmed. There was engagement, there were videos they could make, there was all these sort of things they could do for it. But it's carried on so long, it's still carrying on, and it's really hard for people to move on and heal if people keep banging on the door and keep saying, hey, look, remember this? And sure, some people need that. But if it's not about you, it's not about you, is it? You're just making it about you and making it so that you can get some benefit out of it somehow. And isn't that in some way, doing the same as others? Like, and there's this whole thing where people seem to have double standards where, you know, they want you to hold standards they're not willing to keep. And that when you sort of start recognizing that, they start having a problem with it. But it's nothing to do with you. It's not actually anything wrong with your standards. Maybe their standards are too high or they've just got different standards. But if you don't match their standards, you know, even if they're not matching them, which happens quite a lot of time, a lot of people who are talking about liars and all that sort of stuff are lying themselves. And I know that because I grew up with a liar. My dad's a pro, um, you know, so it is what it is, but it's also not what it isn't. So it's not, you can't do this to people, you can't just go around saying because I disagree or you have a disagreement, then you're going to try and destroy them in some way. You know, I don't understand how anyone could look at themselves in the mirror and think that that's okay, especially if they're, portraying themselves as nice, kind people and then not really being nice, kind people. It's sad, really. And I wonder if people come to me about all the gossip and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure it happens to a lot of people just because I appear vulnerable. I appear like I'm someone who is going to put up with that. And you know what I kind of do? Because it takes me a while to process. I kind of do I do put up with it and then I regret it because I sort of know that it's happening. And I'm like, that is not. But then you sort of get these social groups and, they start excluding people, which is the video I'm going to be playing soon. It should be long enough to talk about now. It's quite interesting. It's from a Cults to Conscious video. It came out, I think, yesterday my time. So, and it's just talking about the us versus them aspect of cults, but it actually happens. You can be a cult-like thinking happens. If you go against the grain, if you start disagreeing with the people in your group, you're going to be excluded. And if that's not the definition, so I'll just play this and then we'll get back. Excuse me. Sorry. Which one it is? This one.
about language is when you leave, finding a therapist that also kind of understands where you came from. So you don't have to spend, like I did in my case, half of my time just explaining these Mormon words so that we could get past it and get to the next point. Finding someone who understands both worlds so that you can decompress in a way that doesn't make you more anxious, just trying to explain all these certain little nuances to someone who has no idea. And that brings us to the next one, which is us versus them mentality. Because when you isolate someone, especially with language, it really does create, we know best, and you guys just have no idea. Not only do they literally have no idea, but it makes them feel like they're special being on the inside and put up on a pedestal, which also makes leaving really hard because you realize you're not that special.
And I think this is why people go cult hopping, right? And it's one of the things we really don't like to admit as far as why people are attracted to cults, which is it makes you feel special, and that's one of the things I realized in my journey, where I was like, growing up, lack of language, right? We were not a cult. We were missionaries on this special mission from God. And then in school, I was a super student. And then I was in the military and I was a super soldier in the military. And then I got out and I just tried to work a regular corporate job and I basically fell apart, and I realized like, oh, there's nothing to make me feel special. And cults rely very heavily on making you feel special. The answer I like to give people deconstructing now is nothing. You're not special.
And that's okay.
Or I like to say you are unique and special just like everyone else in the world.
Yeah.
Humans, we are so prone to us versus them. This is kind of evolutionarily the way humans are. All else being equal, you're going to pick the people that look like you and sound like you. I also think it's one of the things people really misunderstand about extremism is, us versus them mentality. Being in an extremist group, it doesn't feel bad. It feels awesome. Like, it feels really good to be surrounded by people that look and think like you and are on the same mission and are fighting in the same direction. I think this is why so many of us that deconstruct religion will get into politics or some other kind of issue that we can really, really care about, because it does feel good being in community and it does feel good having an enemy to be against.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's so interesting to see it happen. And like in the military, they just actively build it into you. Part of calling cadence while we march around is just insulting other groups and the other platoon who we literally work with and are also soldiers being trained by the same people. But, oh, you better believe we're going to like our group better. Us versus them mentality, especially when you bring in fear and persecution and what the outsiders are going to do to you, is exceptionally powerful.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I tell people who are in cults they cannot leave, which is usually children or teenagers or maybe Americans right now, is, hold on, right? Survive till you can get away and try to remember that the world is not as bad as they're telling you.
Yeah. And I think you're right about the fear thing.
All right. Okay, so that there is just, I found that really interesting, and I watched it this morning, and I was just like, and and because she's the lady who was knitting, she's written some books. One's called Cultured, and 'cause she was from the Children of God, so she's in one of the very extreme versions, and also the military. There's another version of like intense high control conditioning type situation. You know, so I just found it really interesting that the thought process of us versus them is so easy to fall into. And I'm actually partial to influence from others. So, not partial, like not like I don't want influence from others, but if I keep hearing it often enough, I'm going to accept it. So I reckon I would have been, I did end up in a cult. um, so yeah, it wasn't fun. But I think I ended up there because I wanted acceptance, and you know, going to a church and receiving fellowship when they don't even know you is like that felt like pure love, pure acceptance. And then you start hearing what they're saying, and you're like, not everybody. Um, so yeah, but I feel like, I was writing down a lot of things as I was listening to that, and I keep a notepad whenever I'm talking to my therapist. I've written down a lot of things. So um, but you know, when with trauma bonded people, they need supply. Like it's just like a narcissist. They need supply because if they don't have their supply of their trauma bond, then they're gonna, the world's gonna end. It's just the same as a narcissist, and they handle it differently. The result's still the same, well, generally, and it's just so they need the supply and the input all the time. Otherwise, both people or all the people are going to be triggered in some way because they're trauma bonded. They didn't come in there or healed and all that sort of stuff. They came in trauma bonded. So when situations trigger one, the other person didn't know it was going to trigger, was unsure, whatever. If one's getting more than the other, things need to be balanced in all situations. Like, and I've found myself letting things get unbalanced. So these people thought they had a position above me in some way, and nobody does. I don't have a position above anyone either. So when I start getting lectured and talked down to, or someone saying, you can't do this, and then they go off and do that, then I start going, hey now. And, it takes me a little while to realize that it's happening. And, it took me a long time to realize that, my mother, I was talking to her right up until she told me to go join my stepfather, who took his life. So, and I still made excuses for her, and they are reasons why she's such an asshole. But a lot of it's because she chooses to be. So, but I used to give her the excuse of, well, she's been through a lot of trauma, so her trauma hurt people, which I don't even think is true. Hurt people try the best not to hurt the others. Unhealed people hurt people. Toxic people hurt people. You can't just walk around saying, I'm hurt. I hurt people. No, it doesn't cut it. It's just a stupid ass saying that got printed up on a wall and everyone thought that it was cool. Like, live, laugh, love. Like, so it's just, I'm just finding the whole thing very weird. And, the more I'm out of those situations, the more I can start to see what they were and see the patterns. And it's not just, this YouTube community that I got involved in, that which is, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. They're all great people and all that sort of stuff. But, I let myself get trauma bonded. And, in AA, they say, one of the first things they tell you is don't develop relationships with the other people in AA. It's one of the reasons why it's anonymous. They say the same thing in Smart Recovery. Don't develop too close of a friendship with other people in recovery because they're also going through recovery. It could be anything that they're going through recovery for, but there's a trauma while they're there, and you meet each other in recovery, it's trauma bond, and that's sort of what happened, and it's because I didn't think that I was enough, because I'm either getting told I'm too much or not enough, and you know, too much of this, not enough of that. Well, for some, I'm not enough of this, too much of that. Um, so you can't please everyone all the time. So in the end, all you can really do is please yourself, keep yourself happy, and anybody else is a bonus. And that's what I've been living for the last, I don't know, couple of months, trying to. This eating thing makes things difficult. Yeah, it makes my brain fog and all that sort of stuff. So it does take a little bit longer to process than it even would if I was eating properly, so that my body had the nutrients that it requires, proper brain function. Um, so as far as this output and input thing, when supply outweighs, when output outweighs input, you know, or vice versa, that's when it becomes unbalanced. And, you know, if someone's going to get burnt out, you know, usually it's the person doing the supply of whatever that is, friendship, time, rah, 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 you know, and the person who is needing the input, you know, because they're getting their supply. And generally, especially trauma bonded codependent people, they're both getting supply. That's part of it, codependence, you know, and interdependence is where I plan to be, which is I'm getting there. Hey, it's magic. Dependent on her. So interdependence is where I plan to be, which is where I'm happy within myself, regardless of what other people say about me or think about me. Um, and I'm happy to be around those who are happy to be around me. I'm not going to force friendships or anything like that. You know, as soon as I start to feel like I'm not welcome, well, you know, there's a door. I'll leave it, and I'm not going to announce my departure. It's not an airport, and nobody deserves or is owed anything from me anymore, except for my children. Um, and that's just the way it is. And you know, you can call me a narcissist or selfish, but you know, for the last 3 years, me and my therapist have come to terms with the fact. Sorry, I've come to terms with the fact that I'm allowed to be selfish sometimes. Because when you're constantly selfless, you're not getting anything. You're not giving anything to yourself. All you're doing is giving everything to everybody else. And, you know, I don't think I need acceptance anymore from anybody. You know, I'm happy to get it. But if my mum's not going to give it to me, I'm probably not going to, you know, that's never going to happen. I'm never going to get acceptance from my mother. That relationship is broken. Forever. Mother, still watching. Don't try. Get back yourself. But anyway, so yeah, and so I'll just go to play this other one because I would like to go get a drink now that Magic's drinking, and I'll just play this other one. It's about it's a Psych to Go one which I saw, and it's about you'll see when I find it.
Sign of what you've endured. The goal isn't to erase them, it's to learn how to live
Oops,
with
I've
them.
muted the
And
wrong
maybe
one.
one day to see the beauty in the goal. If you're watching this,
So sorry.
you might be in a place where the thought of going through the next hour, let alone the next day, feels like climbing a mountain. You're not necessarily actively planning to leave, but the idea of just stopping feels like a relief. It's a quiet exhaustion, a heavy silence where hope used to be. And if this is you, I want you to know one thing before we go any further. It's okay that you feel this way. Your pain is real, and you're not wrong for feeling it. This video is not here to tell you to just be positive. It's here to be a hand on your shoulder, to sit with you in the dark, and to offer a few gentle steps for when you can't see the path forward. The first thing to unlearn is that you're broken and need to be fixed. You're not broken, you are in pain, and there's a difference. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, embracing the cracks as part of its history, not something to hide. Your pain, your exhaustion, your desire for it all to stop, these are the cracks. They are not a sign of failure. They are a sign of what you've endured. The goal isn't to erase them, it's to learn how to live with them, and maybe one day to see the beauty in the gold that fills them. When the future feels like an impossible weight, don't try to carry it. You don't have to figure out tomorrow, or next week, or next year. Just focus on the next 5 minutes. Can you survive the next 5 minutes? That's it. In those 5 minutes, could you do one small thing? Like, could you get a glass of water? Or step outside and feel the air on your face for a few seconds? Or can you put on a song? You're not committing to a whole day. You're just committing to the next 5 minutes. And sometimes that's all you can do. And that's more than enough. When you're in this state, you feel disconnected from everything, including your own body. This is called dissociation, and it's a common response to overwhelming pain. The antidote is to find one small thing that feels undeniably real. Hold an ice cube in your hand, feel the cold, sharp intensity of it. Or pet your dog or cat and focus on the warmth of their fur and the texture of their hair. Make a cup of tea and just hold the warm mug. These are grounding techniques. They're not distractions, they're anchors. They pull you out from the storm in your head and back into the physical world, even if only for a moment. This is the most important step. If the urge to stop is overwhelming, make a deal with yourself. Tell yourself, okay, I can make this decision, but I'm not going to make it right now. I'm going to postpone it until tomorrow. You're not lying to yourself. You're just creating a little bit of space. And in that space, something can change. A friend might call. The sun might come out. You might hear a song that makes you feel a tiny flicker of something else. Postponing the decision isn't giving up. It's giving yourself another chance. It's choosing not today. And finally, the hardest step. You have to let someone know you're struggling. I know it feels impossible. You don't want to be a burden. You don't have the energy to explain. But you don't have to explain everything. You can just send one text. It can be as simple as, I'm not okay. And that's it. Send it to a friend, a family member, or a therapist. Or if you feel like you have no one else, reach out to a crisis line. The people on the other end are trained for this, and they won't judge you, and they will just listen. Their entire job is to just sit with you in the dark so that you don't have to be alone. We'll put some numbers in the description. Reaching out is not a sign of weakness. It's literally the single bravest thing you can do. Keeping living when you'd rather not is not about finding something grand or sudden joy. It's about finding the strength to take one more breath. It's about choosing not today. It's about feeling the sun on your face for 1 second. It's about remembering that even in the darkest night, there are people holding a light for you, waiting for you to just reach out. You are so much more than your pain, and your story is still being written. Please let someone help you write your next chapter. If you or someone watching this video is trying to help someone else in crisis, can you share the resources that you've used in your region that can be helpful for someone who might need it? As anyone watching this could be anywhere in the world, it's important that we can share resources we've known about in our local regions in case anyone needs them. And of course, for those needing help, please also do your due diligence as well to ensure you seek the help that's appropriate for you.
So, yeah, I thought that
Pain
was,
changes us in ways
I
we might not
don't
even
know what's going
realize.
on there.
When life
Oh,
deals us
sorry, it just started off in the background. So, yeah, so I found that really helpful. You know, I haven't been feeling like that for a while, but there is that moment where, there's a storm in your brain, and I find that a cup of tea is really helpful because it takes me time to make it, and then you have to sit there, and because if a good cup of tea is one you have to sort of blow on a little and sit, and that gives me more dopamine rush than anything else these days. Like, it's actually one I can feel. I can feel what a cup of tea does to me, and it's before I even drink it. It's the smell. It's a routine of making the tea in the morning. Is get up, turn the kettle on, let the dogs out, go back and make the tea, and then I sit down in front of the computer. Um, Although I'm doing that a lot less now. I'm taking up art again. So I've started watercolors because I didn't do any art for since Tony died. Because I used to sit at the table and he'd sit there, and he'd come up and get his drink and have a look at whatever was I was doing, and he was really, really keen on my artwork and me getting into tattooing and all that sort of stuff because that was a dream at the stage. Not anymore. I don't know why I even thought about that. I can't handle blood. um, but the drawing I can do, not with blood. But yeah, but I found that I couldn't bring myself to. I had it set up for a week and I just couldn't sit down to do anything because as soon as I put pen to paper or brush to paper, that's when I have sort of moved on, sort of thing, and not forgotten. But it's like that's when I can start going back to myself because I think a lot of ways that when you have the sort of disabilities I do, or even just the traumas, and it comes with everybody. Everybody puts on a mask depending on who they're talking to. And excuse me, I'm a bit emotional. I find it, I'm finding it very difficult to put on that mask in front of anybody now. And if they can't take me as I am, then don't take me at all, I guess, because you know, as soon as I start getting told I'm not allowed to do something, is when I really want to do it. And that's a pathological avoidance, and that's a diagnosis. It's not an excuse. Um, and I really feel like sometimes these TikToks and YouTube shorts that, 7 signs that you've got this, 7 signs you've got that, you know, no, it takes a lot more than recognizing something that's similar. Um, but that's not to say that these people don't have these things. It's just, I don't know. I'm a little bit sore about that because I've been having to prove myself for a very long time, and I'm not going to prove myself to friends, especially about my disability. I mean, if the government accepts it enough that I have a significant funding package and, and all that sort of stuff, and that's me saying that I'm bad enough that the government is like, yeah, right, rather than, no, no, fight you with lawyers to say that you don't do it. That's because it's there and the evidence is there. It's not me just watching a TikTok and deciding that that's what I am that day or week or month or whatever. It takes a little bit more than that. And 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 I just feel that sometimes people disregard other people's feelings because they would rather be right. And I am someone who did that, because I used to be like, I'd rather apologize after as long as I get the information beforehand. And now, you know what? I'll just wait for the information to come to me as it comes to me when I feel like, because it does seem to come to me at the right moments, um, rather than me seeking out and searching for it. And, people will tell me whatever they want to tell me. I'm not particularly nosy and I'm all that sort of stuff, but I am prone to influence and all that sort of stuff because I don't read social cues. So I trust other people to tell me what they see. And if it's not what I see, then I tend to believe them, even if they're wrong. And that's because I often, majority of the thing, I may sound like a know-it-all, but I always think I'm wrong about everything. Like I won't even comment on a comment on threads or whatever, which I don't really do so much anymore. but I wouldn't even do that without actually going back and researching, making sure that I was doing it factually. If I'm going to be condescending, I'm going to do it with facts rather than just opinions. Um, so yeah, I just find it really interesting how therapy has been astounding for me, because I don't know how I would have got through this last year, 2 years, without having someone who's a professional, who has no skin in the game, um, who I get to counter things off with, and it's difficult because each friend group, they're going to have different opinions about different people and different other, there's no one, but because I've got my therapist, and he's been consistent, and he's seen my patterns over a certain length of time, and I don't see the point of going to therapy without being honest. The one thing I haven't been able to talk about is my mother, but we're getting there. Um, yeah, I just can't. It's just too much. And that's not because, you know, it's because I'll have to start realizing the depths of the abandonment. And to be honest, I think I'd rather just move on. But without going back and looking at it and working through it, then I'm probably never going to move on. I'm always going to be seeking approval from someone. And the only person I really need to approve of me is myself. And I don't think I'm terrible. I think I try my best. Uh, we all do. Uh, but I'm also not going to let people tell me who I am anymore, or tell me who to talk to, or tell me what to do, tell me how to dress, do all the things. No one's allowed to tell me what to do. And, I used to say that, and I used to think I actually lived that way, but I don't think I did, because, as soon as I get a bit of disapproval from someone, I'd switch something. And and I don't do that so much anymore, and that started with my outfits. Now I wear whatever it is I want to wear, regardless of whatever anyone else thinks, because I like it, I'm comfortable. So now I'm going to start being like, it's not just going to be the outside, I start doing that too. It's going to be the inside, I start caring about more if I accept me than others. And it's going to take time and therapy, but I'm lucky that I actually don't mind the therapy in such, because it actually helps, because I drill down into something that's deep, and when it hurts, I know it's deep. Um, because otherwise I'm just going and having a chat that costs money, a very expensive chat. So, I want this to work, and he's not fixing me. He's giving me the tools to fix myself. And the more I get, because I'll use anything. So I'm even going to try EMDR, even though it bored me to tears the first time. But I'm going to give it another go, because maybe now I'll have more patience. Who knows? But there's that one that they put something into you for PTSD. They put it into their neck. They I can't think of what it's called, but they sounds like lion or something. But they inject it into your neck, and that's supposed to help. And I've even been looking into that. The only thing that's stopping me is I have an intense fear of needles. So if I can work it out through therapy, then that's what I'll do. But if not, then I'll go down that route, because I'll all I want to do is be better. Not better than anybody. I just want to be better than who I've been led I am, who I've been led to believe I am. Um, I'm not this person. I'm not this person that my mum thought it was okay to abandon. I'm not this person that my father thought it was okay to put all these thoughts into your brain, the emotional stuff, and, all this other stuff. I'm not that person. I am me, and I can tell you who I am, and you can either believe me or don't, because I'm not going to prove myself anymore. I'm not going to try and make people understand me. Communication is key. But understanding is what matters more. You can communicate till, the cows come home, but unless there's some sort of understanding of when they're coming home, what's the point? You're just going to sit there waiting for the cows to come home. I don't know when they're coming home. You need to have some understanding of the whole point of things. And a lot of times people are communicating without any understanding. They just want to be heard, which is fine, because that's absolutely valid. But when they want to be heard and they don't want to listen, then that's when there's an input and output, disparity. So anyway, I just, yeah, my YouTube's going to go back to being the random type stuff. I don't have the capacity to help people. So, you know, well, I do, but I don't, I don't have the capacity to build a community. Because to me, it just feels like building another cult that, I don't want to be part of, but I love my community. I love being part of the community, the people that I still have within it. And I love that, but I also don't want to be so tied to it that all my value is placed upon it. And it was being that way. And yeah, I just don't want it to be that way anymore. Not for anything. My value is placed upon the amount of love I can give and the good works I can possibly do once I finished healing myself. I'm taking the doctors, two doctors, my actual doctor and my therapist, have both said I have to have this year as a holiday. So I'm doing that now, and I'm really enjoying it. So, this is a saying I wrote down too. Love isn't measured by how much you can endure, but by how much of yourself you are willing to lose. And I don't think I'm willing to lose any more of myself. So, there's another one I wrote down. Not every message deserves a funeral. Neither does any leaving of any situation require closure. Because in the end, I don't think closure really exists. There's always going to be questions. You're always going to wonder why. But if you just sort of say, nah, thank you, but no thank you anymore. I wish everybody well, but I don't wish everybody to be eating at my table and having and joining in my conversation. And that's not to say that I don't want to hear their conversation, but they can have it over there. So, and that goes for, there's a lot of people in my life over a long period of time where that goes for that I've been holding on to, that I've been recently letting go of. Like, I've been going through my friends on Facebook and I've been letting go of people who don't bring me joy. No, not even that. It's more so who don't interact or, I'm trying to bring my circle closer. Because who am I doing it for anyway? You know? And my therapist said something interesting where, because I was talking to him about how I felt like I'd failed as far as recovery corner and my love, more love, and and how you kind of have to get out there and put your face out there and all that sort of stuff. I'm not terribly keen on that. That's why my hair is always messy because I don't look in the mirror before I get on, but I am seeing it now. Um, but the whole thing of when I don't know where I was. Anyway, therapy, that's what I was saying. Yeah. And the narcissist thing, and there are traits of narcissism that are healthy. So he was saying that me wanting to put myself on camera to help people because the intention is good, is a good intention, so that's the healthy version because, you have to, this is his words, not mine. You have to be willing to put yourself out there in some sort of way, trait of narcissism. I can't remember which one he called it. There was a specific thing, big word, and I didn't write it down. But it was the it's that aspect of it's like the opposite of unhealth, the toxic version of narcissism, where you're willing to do these things and put yourself out there. Or you can be an actor or a musician and all that sort of stuff, but you're doing that sort of stuff out there because you're happy to be out in front of the crowd giving them entertainment. But even then, that a lot of these people are like a ball of nerves before they go out there. But then they go out there and actually the part of giving and receiving, like they're receiving love and they're giving love, like so that's that reciprocal type thing that, you know, it's it's quite beautiful how it works, but I still don't go around thinking that just because they're a musician, they're a narcissist. No, I know a lot of them don't want to be seen, but they have to promote their work. So, um, yeah, so I find it really difficult because everyone seems to want to throw it out there and say it's a horrible thing. And it is. Narcissism is a terrible thing. But just imagine if you're being diagnosed with NPD, you're one of those people who've got that on your diagnosis. That's one thing. It's like how BPD was treated. It's like that was considered untreatable. Now they know it's fully treatable, and they're trying to shift away from BPD, borderline personality disorder, because of the stigma against the name, and it's gonna trying to put it under the umbrella of CPTSD, which is trying to get put in the DCM, all that stuff. So, you know, but you just like, how are they going to seek help if they feel like the world already hates them? That's before, just imagine if a child's watching, I don't know, whatever. And it's not to say that people who have narcissistic traits aren't going to worry about what other people think about them, because they really do. And so they may like brush it off and not take it on board, but that's not to say that it's not in there and that they might want. I don't know, I always think that there's help for everybody. There's help for everybody as long as they're seeking it. You have to realize that you need help, but you have to know that there's no stigma to go and receive help, and that makes it more and more difficult. It goes through the same thing with alcoholism, any type of recovery addiction. There was such a stigma that people would rather die than seek help because they didn't want people to know. And mental health, it's just always been that way. So I just feel that narcissism is terrible, and we should talk about it, and we should try and talk about it in the realms of that there are traits. Everybody has to have some version of narcissistic traits to survive. But like, you walk out of the house and you make sure that you look all right. You you check your hair in the mirror before you go on a live. That would be a good thing to do. But that's not to say that it's negative. Not everything is negative. It's just like selfish has a negative connotation to the word, when sometimes you have to be selfish to survive. And that's without even hurting people. It's just making sure that you're looked after before you look after others. That's selfish. And then you can be selfish. Otherwise you're just being selfless and not really getting much in return. So I don't really know how long. Oh, we've gone on for just over an hour. Ugh, I don't really like doing that. So yeah, it's my channel is mostly going to be just because I started it years and years and years ago, so that I could have a repository for any videos that I might want my kids to see in future. And that's what I'm going to do too now, because my son's down in Wollongong and my daughter's elsewhere, and they don't really know me as I am now, and I don't really know me as I am now. So I've hidden a lot of videos, but they're all still there so that they get to look and they'll see. And if they want to see now, they'll get to see. But it's not really for anybody else but for me. Yeah. And it's just to keep track of my life so I can look back on where I've gone and all that sort of stuff. Because I have watched a few recovery corners and a few needing meetings, and where I've come from where I was is quite extraordinary. And I have a lot to be proud of, and I want to be allowed to feel it without being made to feel like I'm trying to be better than anybody else. So, but anyway, so I will head off. Just because I feel like I've been rabbiting on. It is quite awkward talking by yourself. I used to need to have someone here, just because I felt that I was not enough. And I still, it is. But, if you're still here, thank you. Love you. And yeah, I am going to play the Sit on a Pineapple song again because I love it. Misha made it. And yeah, so it's just one of my favorites, and it always makes me happy. So yeah. All right, well, I love yous, and I'll talk to you soon. I still don't know where the buttons are.
Big pineapple, go sit on a pineapple. I got a big pineapple for my haters, a gold can with custom indicators. So when you see me, you'll know that it's me. Big pineapple coming through your city though. So haters, let me tell you this. If you're flexing and hating on me, what the hell are you doing? You look stupid, to be honest. Go sit on a pineapple. Oh, young with custom indicators. So when you see